I didn't defend myself. I just stopped being his daughter. Not loudly. A Sunday. Of course it did. In our house, Sundays weren't peaceful. My brother ironed his shirt even though no one was coming over. And I stood in the kitchen doorway holding a graduate school acceptance letter in my hand. Columbia University. Full academic scholarship. I had rehearsed how I would tell them. I thought this would finally be the day he looked at me the way he looked. At my brother, proud, certain, claiming. Instead, he folded the letter once, then again, then placed it on the table like it was a receipt he didn't intend to keep. You think this makes you special? He asked. His tone wasn't angry. It was disappointed. That was worse. My brother smirked into his tea. My mother didn't look up. You're 23, my father continued, still chasing ideas. When will you grow up? Your cousin is already married. Your brother is building something real. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You're a disappointment, Sarah. The room didn't react. No gasps. Love was conditional, and I had failed the condition. The air felt heavy. I said, and I did, for the first time in my life, I understood exactly where I stood. Not as a daughter. Not as pride. Not as legacy. As a liability. My father sipped his tea. Conversation. Letter. What they didn't see was the shift. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was internal. A quiet recalibration. Something that used to ache inside me. I was enough. The need to be chosen. It shut down. Not broken. Disabled. That night, I sat on my bedroom floor, staring at the acceptance letter. Columbia. New York. A life no one in my family understood. I realized something uncomfortable. If I stayed, I would spend the rest of my life trying to earn a title that would never be given. Good daughter. If I left, I would lose them, but had I ever really had them? In traditional families like mine, love comes wrapped in hierarchy. Sons are investments. Daughters are negotiations. My brother's smallest wins were celebrated like national holidays. My achievements were analyzed for practicality. Will this help you find a husband? Is this stable? Is this respectable? Respectable. That word followed me like a leash. That Sunday, when he called me a disappointment, I finally understood the structure. I was not failing. I was non-compliant, and non-compliant daughters are inconvenient. The next morning, I didn't argue about graduate school. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't defend my ambition. I started observing. My father liked control disguised as concern. My mother enforced his, because it was rewarded. I had spent years reacting. Explaining. Defending. Crying. That phase ended on Sunday. From that day forward, I stopped explaining myself. Silence is powerful in houses built on authority. When you stop reacting, people get uncomfortable, but I didn't do it to make them uncomfortable. I did it because something inside me no longer needed their validation. I withdrew emotionally. Small things first. I stopped volunteering information. Stopped sharing updates. Stopped asking permission to go out. Stopped seeking approval before decisions. Not REBELLIOUSL. Strategically. My father noticed the silence before anyone else. You're very quiet lately, he said one evening. I looked up from my laptop. I'm focused. On what? On becoming unreachable. But I didn't say that. Weeks passed. The Columbia deadline approached. I applied without telling them. Secured housing without telling them. Accepted the offer without telling them. Every signature felt like a private oath. Not revenge. Repositioning. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was trying to remove myself from the system that defined me as less. At dinner one night, my father talked about my brother's business idea. Investment. Risk. Vision. Words I had never heard him use about me. I watched. Not RESENTFUL. Why clinically. He believed in him because he saw what I was becoming. That wasn't personal. It was structural. And once you understand structure, you stop taking things personally. You start planning the day. I told him I was leaving wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No confrontation. Just a statement. I'm moving to New York next month. What? He asked. Graduate school? I already said that's unrealistic. I wasn't asking. Silence. Not disrespectful. Not emotional. Flat. Controlled. For the first time in my life, I wasn't seeking permission. I was informing. You think you can survive without this family? My father asked. The question wasn't about survival. It was about loyalty. I met his eyes. Yes. Not angrily, simply, he looked at me. Differently, then, not with pride, not with anger, with something. She whispered. There it was, guilt, the family's favorite weapon. I'm not hurting him, I replied calmly. I'm choosing myself. She didn't understand that sentence. In her world, daughters endure. They don't choose, but something had. Father shook my hand like I was a business associate. Don't embarrass us, he said. I nodded. That sentence would have destroyed me once. Now it felt like confirmation. I wasn't leaving as a daughter. I was leaving as someone unclaimed. As the plane lifted off, I didn't feel revenge. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. The daughter who begged for approval died on a Sunday afternoon. What boarded that flight was something else. Something quieter. Sharper. Less reachable. They thought I was leaving to prove them wrong. They miscalculated. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was building something they wouldn't have access to. And one day, they would realize what they had dismissed. But by then, I wouldn't need them to.
New York didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like exposure in my family's world. Life was structured rules, roles, predictable consequences. In New York, nobody cared who my father was, what my last name meant, or whether I was respectable. The first week, I kept waiting for someone to tell me I was doing it wrong. No, one did, because no one was watching. And that's when it hit me. I had been living under surveillance my entire life. Not cameras. Expectations, the kind that make you edit your personality before you speak, the kind that make you apologize for wanting more. So I stopped apologizing, not with speeches, not with rebellion, with silence, with distance, with decisions made privately. My apartment was small, one room, a narrow kitchen, a window that looked onto brick and fire escapes. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. No one could walk in and demand an explanation. No one could interrogate my timeline like it belonged to the family. Every night, I cooked for myself and ate in peace. The quiet wasn't lonely, it was unfamiliar. There's a difference. Loneliness feels like abandonment. This felt like privacy, and privacy is addictive. When you've never had it, the first month, my mother called every day, sometimes twice. Her voice was always gentle in New York. Like distance softened her. How are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you praying? Questions that sounded like care, but I could hear the control underneath them. If I answered wrong, she would panic. If I answered right, she would relax. My father didn't call. He texted once. Focus on your studies. Don't forget where you come from. Wasn't advice, it was a warning. Don't evolve too far. Don't become unrecognizable. Don't become someone I can't claim. Stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I put my phone down and didn't reply. Not to punish him, to retrain myself. I was done chasing. Graduate school was brutal in a way my family would never understand. Not because it was hard work was familiar. It was brutal because nobody gave you credit for potential. You were either prepared or you weren't. In my family, my brother was praised for ideas. In New York, ideas were cheap. Execution was currency, so I executed. While other students tried to impress professors with confidence, I sat in the back and listened. I learned the rhythm of the room. Who spoke to be heard? Who spoke because they had something to say? Who needed attention? Who had power? I wasn't just studying my field. I was studying people. That was the first gift my family ever gave me without knowing. When you grow up walking on eggshells, you become excellent at reading micro-signals in a controlled house. Hyper-awareness is survival. In the real world, it becomes leverage. By the second semester, my professor, Dr. Monroe, pulled me aside after class. You're quiet, she said. I waited. People often mistake quiet for weakness. She didn't, but your work, she continued, has teeth. Teeth. I Liked that word. It implied precision, not chaos, not aggression. A bite delivered when it matters. She offered me a research assistant. Position, paid, selective, .aa. Line on my resume that would open doors. When I emailed my mother about it, she responded instantly. Tell your father. Not. Congratulations, not pride. Tell your father, as if achievements only become real when he validates them. Stared at the message and felt something cold settle. I didn't tell him, not yet. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted to see who I became without his reaction shaping the moment. My father's silence was not peace. It was pressure every few weeks. My mother would slip his expectations into our calls like poison disguised as sugar. Your father is worried you'll become too independent. Your father says a woman's success should not make her intimidating. Your father thinks you should visit this summer so people don't talk. People don't talk. In traditional families, people are invisible judges, live in everyone's mouth. They were always the reason for rules, always the excuse for control. In New York, people didn't exist. Nobody cared if I came home or not. Nobody asked if I was married. Nobody measured my worth in obedience. So when my mother said, "People will talk," I smiled. "Let them," I said softly. She went quiet, like I had spoken a language she didn't understand. I could almost hear her thinking, "Who is this girl?" I wasn't sure either, but I liked her at the end of the first year. I got an internship offer, a serious one, a respected firm in my industry. Internships weren't just jobs, they were entry points. The offer email arrived at midnight. I read it twice, then a third time, then I stood up and looked out the window at the black glass of the buildings around me, and something inside my chest lifted not. Joy. Certainty. I wasn't surviving. I was moving forward without permission. I still didn't tell my father, not because I feared him, because I no longer wanted him involved in the architecture of my life. Traditional families don't just want updates, they want influence, information. Is their access point, so I controlled information. I gave my mother safe details. I'm eating, I'm studying, I'm fine. I stopped giving her things she could turn into leverage. Didn't tell her my professor's name. I didn't tell her my salary. I didn't tell her my plans. It wasn't secrecy. It was boundaries, and boundaries in families like mine are treated like betrayal. The summer I didn't go home, my father finally called, not to ask how I was, to reassert control. His voice was calm, the way it always was when he wanted to sound reasonable. "We are your family," he said. "You can't just disappear." "I'm not disappearing," I replied. "Yes, you are. You didn't come home." Your aunt asked questions. Your mother looks embarrassed. There it was. Reputation, not my well-being, their image. I paused, then chose my words carefully. "I'm building my life," I said. "And what about your duties?" Duties? That word used to pull me back into line. This time, it bounced off something hard inside me. "My duties are to myself," I said. Evenly, silence. He didn't shout, he didn't insult, he simply tightened his voice. Into disappointment, the same weapon he used that Sunday. "Look at you," he said. So arrogant now. Arrogant in his mouth. It meant uncontrolled. I smiled slightly, even though he couldn't see it. "I'm busy," I said. "I have class." I ended the call. When it was over, my hands didn't shake, my stomach didn't twist. I didn't pace. I just sat there, breathing steadily, and realized something terrifying. The fear was gone. That was when the real evolution began. Not the career, not the money, the emotional rearrangement. I stopped feeling guilty. For not being the daughter they designed, I stopped. Grieving the approval I would never receive, I stopped hoping they would. Change because hope, in families like mine, is not optimism, it's a leash, and I finally cut. It quietly, my internship turned into an offer not immediate, nothing was instant but real, a path. Salary that would make my mother's eyes widen and my father's jaw tighten. I rented a better apartment, still modest, but clean, bright, private, and when I bought my first expensive Atoma winter coat that fit me perfectly, I didn't post it, I didn't announce it, didn't even tell my friends. I wore it like armor. No one needed to. No, not yet. The first sign of inversion didn't come from success. It came from need. It was my brother. He texted me one evening. "Hey, can we talk?" In our family, my brother never asked me anything gently. He demanded, or mocked, or ignored. This message was different. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "About what?" He took 10 minutes to respond. "I might need help." I felt a brief flicker of something satisfaction. Maybe, but I didn't allow it to grow. Satisfaction is noisy, and I was learning to move silently. What kind of help? I typed back he called instead of answering. Let it ring. Not to punish him, to control the pace. Then I picked up his. Voice was strained. The business he'd been building was bleeding money. He needed connections, advice, maybe, even resources. It was almost funny how quickly family hierarchy melts when the golden child falters. He spoke carefully, like he didn't know who I was anymore. "Sarah," he said, "you're in New York. You've probably know people." Probably he used to speak about my life like it was irrelevant. Now it was useful. I listened without interrupting. Then I said, calmly, "I don't." A lie, technically, but not cruel. I did know people. I just didn't know him access. He went quiet. "What do you mean you don't?" "I mean, I can't help," I replied softly. "I'm busy." He sounded offended. Like denial was something only he was allowed to give. "You're my sister," he said. And there it was, family when it benefits them. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. "I have to go," I said, and I ended the call that night. My mother called. Her voice was trembling. "Your brother told me you refused to help him." I waited. In traditional families, daughters are expected to be emotional labor, to patch holes, to sacrifice quietly, she continued. "He's stressed." "Your father is stressed." "You should?" "Should?" I repeated. A small word? A heavy chain? I interrupted gently. "No," I said. Just one syllable. She went silent. "Sarah," she whispered, like she was speaking to someone dangerous, "what happened to you?" I didn't answer immediately, because the truth wasn't dramatic. It was simple. You trained me that Sunday when you watched him call me a disappointment and said nothing. When you allowed my brother to smirk. When you all agreed that my worth was conditional. This is what happens when the condition is removed. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, I grew up. And in my mind I added, without you. Over the next months, my father's texts became more frequent. Still short. Still cold. But now there were questions in them. Not direct ones. Indirect ones. Probing. "What are you doing these days? Your mother says you're busy. When are you visiting?" They didn't sound like love. They sounded like a door rattling. A system realizing something important was missing. Control and control. Once lost, becomes obsession. But I didn't respond emotionally. I responded strategically. Sometimes I replied with one sentence. Sometimes not at all. I wasn't playing games. I was teaching them a new reality. Access to me is not automatic then. In late November, my mother called with a different voice. Not guilt. Not Concern? Fear? Your father isn't well, she said. The old Sarah would've panicked, would've booked a flight, would've collapsed back into duty. This Sarah asked one question. Calmly, what happened? He's had some chest pain, she whispered. He went to the doctor. They're doing tests. Listened. Then I asked, softly, is he stable? Yes. I exhaled slowly. Not relief, clarity. This was the moment. Not the revenge moment. The moment the family system would try to pull me back through fear. And for the first time, I realized what my father's disappointment had always been: a leash, a tool, a method of control. Now they were reaching for a different tool: illness, guilt, urgency. And I was standing in New York with something I'd never had before: choice. My mother waited, breath trembling, as if she could feel the balance shifting. Are you coming home? She asked. I looked around my apartment, the life I built in silence, without approval, without permission. Then I answered carefully, I'll see. I said, not yes, not no, just, I'll see. And the quiet on the other end of the line told me everything. They were realizing I meant it that night. I didn't sleep much, not because I felt guilty, because I felt the shape of what was coming. Traditional families don't forgive loss of control. They adapt. They pull different strings, they turn up the pressure. And the closer you get to independence, the more aggressively they test your loyalty. They were going to try to reclaim me, not with love, with need, with reputation, with family emergency. And I knew something else too. If I stepped back into that house, it wouldn't be as a daughter begging for approval. It would be as someone they no longer understood. Someone they could not command the way they used to, and that scared them, because the most dangerous person in a traditional family system is not the rebel. It's the one who stops reacting by the end of that week. I booked a flight, not to surrender, not to apologize, to observe, to measure the system, to see who they had become without my obedience, because I had learned something in New York. You don't win by fighting loudly, you win by controlling your position. And I was about to walk back into the house where the daughter in me died, as someone else, someone quieter, someone harder to read, someone they would try to pull back and fail. The house looked smaller, not physically, structurally. When you leave a system long enough, you begin to see its mechanics. The front door opened before I knocked. My mother stood there, thinner than I remembered, relieved, anxious. She hugged me tightly. I let her, but I didn't melt into it. That part of me was gone. Inside, furniture hadn't moved. The framed photos were the same. My brother's graduation, portraits still centered above the fireplace. My accomplishments were still in my old bedroom drawer. Unmentioned. Unmentioned. Nothing had changed, except me. My father was sitting at the dining table, the same seat, the same authority. He looked older, not weak, just slower. He didn't stand when I entered. He nodded. You came, he said. Not thank you, not I missed you, just acknowledgement. I said I would. I replied, and I sat across from him, not beside a cross. It was subtle, but positions matter. Dinner that night felt rehearsed. My mother hovered. My brother avoided eye contact. My father watched me, measuring, calculating, trying to find the old version of me in my posture. He didn't find her. Halfway through the meal, he said it. You've changed. Not a compliment, an accusation. I placed my fork down gently. Yes. Silence. He waited for justification. I didn't give him one. The house wasn't used to silence that didn't bend. Later that night, my mother came into my room. You should sit with your father, she whispered. He's been worried. About his health? I asked calmly. She hesitated. About you? There it was. Not love, control slipping. I stood and walked to the living room. He was alone, watching the news, the volume low. He muted it when I entered. Sit, he said. I didn't. I leaned against the doorway instead. Distance again, subtle, he noticed. I hear you're doing well, he said carefully. I nodded. I am. He didn't ask details. He wanted to see if I would offer them. In traditional families, information is leverage. I had learned that. He cleared his throat. You embarrassed us when you left like that? There it was. Reputation, always reputation. I left for school, I replied evenly. You left without respect. Respect in this house. Respect meant obedience. I held his gaze. I informed you. His jaw tightened slightly. You think you're independent now, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a test. I am. I answered .com, unshaken. For the first time in my life, he didn't immediately respond. He was recalculating because independence is threatening to someone whose identity is control. The next morning, the real test arrived. My brother cornered me in the kitchen. I didn't think you'd actually come, he said. I said I would. He studied me. You're different. Yes, he shifted uncomfortably. I might still need help, he muttered. There was no arrogance in his voice now, just discomfort. I can't, I said. No explanation, no elaboration, just a boundary. He frowned. That's cold. Cold, another word used to discipline daughters. I didn't defend myself. I hope it works out, said softly, and I walked away. That was the moment he understood something. I was no longer available. The real inversion happened that evening. Extended family came over, unplanned or perhaps planned without telling me, in our culture. Family gatherings are performance stages, reputation management events. My aunt hugged me too tightly. So, New York girl, she teased, you think you're too good for us now? The old me would have laughed nervously. Downplayed, deflected. This time, I smiled calmly. No, I said. Just building my life. She glanced at my father, waiting for him to correct me. He didn't. That was new. Dinner began, questions followed. Are you married yet? When are you coming back permanently? Your parents must miss you. Every question was bait, a tug back into duty. I answered simply, I'm focused on my work. I live in New York. I visit when I choose to. When I choose to. That phrase shifted the air. Choice. Daughters. In traditional families are not supposed to speak in terms of choice. My father's fork paused midair. He was watching carefully, waiting for me to slip to, overreact to show emotion. I didn't. My aunt laughed and said loudly, well, your father must be proud now that you finally proved him wrong. The room froze. It was subtle, but it was there. The reference, the Sunday, the disappointment. My father stiffened. He hadn't expected that. He expected me to defend him, to soften it, to protect his image. Everyone looked at me waiting, and I did something I had never done before. Nothing. I didn't rush to protect him. I didn't deny it. I didn't explain. I let the silence stretch, long enough for discomfort to settle, long enough for truth to exist, without interruption. Finally, my father cleared his throat. She misunderstood, he muttered. But it was weak, unconvincing, because silence is powerful, and I had mastered it, after the guests left. He confronted me privately. You should have corrected that, he said sharply. Corrected what? I asked calmly. That comment? Was it wrong? He stared at me. And, for the first time in my life, he didn't have control of the narrative. He didn't have emotional leverage. He didn't have guilt. He didn't have fear. He had only himself. You're disrespectful, he said quietly. No, I replied. I'm honest. Short, precise, unapologetic, something in his posture. Shifted, not defeat, realization. He could not command me anymore. The final moment came the night before. I left. He stood outside my bedroom door. Didn't knock, just stood there. When I looked up, he said, "You think you don't need us?" Not accusation, curiosity. I held his gaze. "I don't need permission." Corrected. Silence. He looked older in that moment. Smaller, because control had been his identity, and I had removed myself from it. "You've changed," he repeated. Yes. He waited for apology, for softness, for surrender. I gave him truth instead. "You called me a disappointment," I said, evenly. That day, something ended. His eyes flickered. Not guilt, recognition. "And now?" he asked. "Now, I don't try to prove myself here." That was it. No shouting, no tears, no revenge. Speech, just clarity. And clarity is brutal when you're used to obedience. The next morning, I left again. This time, my mother hugged me longer. My brother avoided. Eye contact. My father stood at the doorway. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't give advice. He didn't mention reputation. He just nodded. A small gesture, not approval, acceptance of something he could not reverse. On the plane back to New York, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel vindication. I felt distance, clean, complete. The daughter who begged for validation was gone. The woman who remained did not seek. Approval, did not react to guilt, did not collapse under duty, did not offer emotional labor automatically. They didn't lose a daughter. They lost access. And access, once revoked, changes power permanently. Weeks later, my father texted, "Proud of the work you're doing." Short, awkward, uncharacteristic. I read it. Then I placed my phone down. I didn't rush to respond. Because this wasn't about finally earning his pride. It was about something much darker. Much quieter. I no longer needed it. After a while, I replied, "Thank you." 2 words. No emotion, no hunger, no relief. Just acknowledgement, and that was the real revenge. Not humiliation, not destruction, independence. He once said I was a disappointment, but he misunderstood something important. I wasn't disappointing. I was detaching, and the most terrifying thing for someone who thrives on control is a daughter who no longer needs to be controlled.